Hi, I'm Jim Rosemary with New Tech Web, and we're talking today about creating small business websites, what I call the top 10 secrets for successful business websites. Let's get started. So our agenda today, we're going to cover a lot of things in a short amount of time, only an hour, and we've got a lot to cover. It's going to sound like I'm spraying you with a fire hose, and I'm speaking extra fast because we've got a lot of stuff to cover here. There's a lot to building a website. It starts with creating a website with a plan. We'll talk about that. Should you build it yourself or should you have somebody else build it? What are the important things to know about what information you need to save? What are the design considerations in terms of the appearance of the site? And like it says there, content is king. How do you go about writing the content, the text that'll appear on the site? And then when it comes to usability, can people find your site easy to use? And will it serve your purposes as a business owner to help them to buy or to contact you? And then finally, we'll wrap it up with the David Letterman list of the top 10 things that will help you have a more successful website. So let's move forward with what is website success? So think about this. As a business owner, what do you want your website to do for you? Well, in many cases, it's about creating sales leads or volume, basically making sales online or picking up people inquiring about sales. But it's also about driving traffic to the site so you increase your awareness, your exposure. You can sometimes save money by incorporating a process in your website that might otherwise be done on paper or in your office in some way. So that's not something we'll cover here today, but that's something we do for our clients. Increasing customer satisfaction. So for example, if you're selling a product, show them more ways to use it or use it up faster or incorporate it into other things. Maybe give them a feedback mechanism for giving you ideas or reviews on your website. So enhancing that customer satisfaction. And ultimately, it's all about building relationships, whether that be with your clients, your employees, your vendors, and anybody else. All of that can be done with a good website as well. But all of these things are really related to how you see the website as a business owner. What does website success really mean for the visitors? Well, from a visitor's viewpoint, there are a number of different items. For number one, it should be quick to download. Right? We all don't want to wait sitting for that website to load forever. And Google, in fact, really measures the success of your website, and it should load in under 3 seconds. Better yet, if it's under 2, and ideally under 1 second. That's pretty quick. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. It should be easy and intuitive to navigate, something we call Bob's mom's rule or the mother-in-law rule. We'll cover that later on. It should provide valuable content. That's a real key. Remember, content is king. The design should be attractive, something we call professionally appropriate. It needs to be intuitive to use and engaging. It may, in some cases, provide an entertainment value, depending on the nature of your profession or your product or service. In every case, it should always be clear what the expectations are, how to use the site, but more beyond that, how to interact with you as a business, how to buy something, how to return something, how to request a quote. All of those things need to be crystal clear in your website. And finally, if you are selling something online or providing quotes or inquiries, make it really easy to use. And that's something we'll cover right at the end. Now, I am going to give you some bonuses, like I said, so stick around to the end. There's a lot more in the bonuses than in this initial material. So hang on, stay tuned. It all starts with a plan. Hopefully, you already have a business plan. If you don't, or if you'd like to revise it, I'd suggest revisiting that business plan. There are a number of sessions here at BizFair and elsewhere where you can go to learn about creating a business plan. A business plan consists of several parts and pieces: the financial plan, the operations plan, the marketing plan, and other things possibly. I think, as a marketing guy, the most important part of that plan is the marketing. That is, you can have the finances all lined up. You can have the best operations and procedures on the planet, but unless your customers find out about you, unless they are aware of you and can find you and can buy from you or contact you, it's all for naught. So the marketing plan, I think, is the most important piece. That has to be really well thought out. In addition to that, as part of the marketing plan, you need to have a website plan. What specifically is your website going to do for your image, for your identity, for sales, and others? That is part of your marketing plan to support your overall business plan. So that website plan is a real key ingredient, but you need to have all this planned out and thought through in advance before we ever start building the website. For example, you need to have a profitable business model. You need to make sure you'll be able to make money with your business, with your website, before you ever get started. We've consulted with a number of clients through the years that had some good ideas, but really when it came down to it, there wasn't much of a way that they could make money. If they're making 50 cents on a piece, you've got to sell a lot of pieces in order to make any kind of money. So make sure that your business model is profitable. We also want to analyze what works in the real world for you or for your competitors. If you're like most small businesses, you'll probably find that most of your business comes from referrals. So how do we incorporate that into your website? Do you even have a referral plan? That's the kind of thing to think about. What is real world success and how do we get there? We want to determine and create that ideal customer profile, not just who you'll take, who you'll work with, who you'll sell to, but who do you really want? What's that ideal client? The more you define that, the more specifically, the more likely it is you'll have to work with those people. We want to develop some long-term goals. We're in this for the long term for you. So when it comes to establishing long-term goals, what does it look like a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Think about that as you go about building your website, because the foundation that you lay now with your website may need to change in a couple of years. So keep that in mind. And you want to establish an overall purpose for the site. What is it that you want the website to do for you? Should it just enhance your image? Should it simply be a matter of credibility if you're a consultant? People aren't buying anything from you online. They're just supporting their view of you. Or do you actually want to sell stuff or provide quotes on your website? Figure out what your purpose is before you get started. As part of that developing website plan, you again want to make sure that you have those objectives really clear, but you need to organize the information for your website. One of the simple ways to do that is take a Post-it notepad and on each separate piece of paper, write a separate topic that you want to include in the website. It might be each of your services. It might be blog post ideas. It might be different things about your company, your customer service, your privacy policy. Each of those goes on a separate little Post-it note. And then you lay that out kind of like an org chart. And it looks something like this. Now you can do this using a program like Visio or other kind of org chart creators, even Microsoft Word to some degree. But if you do it on paper and lay it out, it's a lot easier to use initially. In this case, this is for a client of ours who's been around for 20-something years. We're continually upgrading their site. So this is one of their initial charts for organizing the information on the website. In the left-hand column, that's all about the company. And nowadays it contains information about their team member and their coaches and their privacy policy and their customer service and their warranties and all that kind of stuff. In the next column, it's information for the customers. It's for, in this case, the players and their parents for a basketball camp. The next column has to do with actually registering for a camp. It's more information about what camps are available, how do you go about the registration, the cart, the checkout, that kind of thing, the order response. Then we have a section with valuable information. So it's the information that's valuable to your clients, even if they're not registering or buying today. So it might be information about sportsmanship or about academic excellence or about basketball history or that kind of thing. All of that goes under the valuable information. And then there's a frequently asked questions page. That's a pretty common page. And then the contact page. He has many more pages than that today, but that's a good starting point. And you may have to change or shift your map, your site map, depending on your business and your business model. So part of the development of a good website plan is figuring out what the design should look like. Again, we call this professionally appropriate design. We'll cover that more in a moment. We want to make sure that your content is clear and that it's all well planned out. Now you notice I have database there in parentheses. What does that mean? Well, not only are you writing the text that people will read, your product descriptions, your service descriptions, the About Us page, your warranty, your blog posts, other information, glossaries, and who knows what. All of that stuff is text that you'll write. But you also need, especially if you have a e-commerce site, you'll need to compile the database for your products. So you'll need to have a product title, a product number, ID, it's called a SKU number, stock keeping unit, SKU number. You'll need to have a description, a full marketing description, and maybe a short description. You may need to categorize and subcategorize your products. You need to know how that's going to work. Maybe there are related products to each of your existing products. You need to plan out which products are related to which ones. Maybe you need other options or attributes for your product, sizes, colors, other things. So you need to plan all that out in advance. All of that data then will be entered into your website, either as a direct upload of a database or a spreadsheet, or you'll be entering this information manually into whatever program you use to sell products. All that needs to be planned out in advance. Then it comes time to build the site. When it comes to building the site, you have a lot of different options. You could use the old-fashioned way and do it by hand. Not many people do it that way anymore. You could build out the site using what's called a CMS, or Content Management System. WordPress, which we'll talk about in a bit, is probably the most popular of all the CMS sites. But you can also use other sites like Squarespace or Weebly or Wix or other things like that. Those are also CMS systems. But even with those CMS systems, you still need to figure out the design, the content, and if you're selling stuff, your database. And finally, when you're all done, you're not done. That is, you need to test and measure your website continually. You need to go back and revise things, update things, change things. It's a never-ending process as a website owner. So be sure you're aware of that before you dive into the pool. So these are a lot of the steps that deal with developing that website plan. These are the two that we're going to focus on the most, design and the content. So when it comes to doing it yourself, sure, you can do that. But just because you can hold a paintbrush doesn't necessarily mean you're an artist. Now, I don't mean to sound belittling in that sense. There are aspects of building websites that can get rather technical. And at times we run into this a lot where people have built a site elsewhere and now they need some technical assistance. And in some cases, they would have been better off starting over and having us build it or another website company build it from the beginning. So you may want to discuss your website plans with a company like ours or others first before you decide to do it yourself, to figure out what's really involved here. But okay, you're going to build it yourself. It's inexpensive to start. Maybe it's free, but sometimes so-called free websites aren't actually free depending on what goes into it. I'll cover that when we talk about WordPress. Sometimes there are websites that are low cost up front. You may not have to pay a designer $3,000 for a website. Maybe it's only $100 up front. But then the hosting cost might be a couple $100 a month. And in the long run, it's like leasing a car versus buying one. You're going to pay a lot more for that website than you would have building a website yourself or hiring a designer or developer to build your site. There are lots of places you can go where you can build your website or have it built for you pretty much automatically. Drag and drop systems that make it seem easy. One of the challenges that you run into, though, when you build it your site is that you have to fill it up with all that stuff, all the content, the pictures, and your products. How do you know it's the right stuff? So there's advantages from a cost perspective in the short term, but in the long term, it may be a little bit more challenging. And then there's a time constraint. Maybe you need something quick and easy, but maybe you need to think about this longer. So it depends. What does a website cost? Well, it depends on which website you use. If you use WordPress, there is a way to have WordPress hosted for free. Most, or not all, hosting companies will host WordPress sites as well. 50% of all WordPress sites are being built worldwide, or new websites are being built worldwide in WordPress. So it's a really popular platform. You'll find that hosting for WordPress can be either from free at WordPress itself or up to $25 a month or so, depending on which features and which functions you use. If you have it hosted at WordPress, they may say it's free, but then they charge you for little extra features. So you may wind up paying $25 or $100 a month for what you thought was going to be a free website. Make sure you know what you're getting into. With WordPress, there are literally thousands of themes. Some of them are free, some cost money. If you want it to be unique, you can custom design or have a custom theme designed for you. When it comes to themes, some thoughts on that topic. When you buy a theme, many companies look to a theme that matches their industry. If you're a plumber, you're looking for plumber themes. Well, I'm here to tell you, you don't have to do that. Some of those themes may incorporate features that are ideal for your specific business. If you're a restaurant, okay, a restaurant theme may incorporate online ordering or menus that would be handy to have pre-built. But for many businesses, having a theme doesn't have to match the type of business that they're in. We use a theme called Divi, D-I-V-I, very flexible, relatively easy to use, and especially lightweight, meaning the sites load quickly. So check out Divi, D-I-V-I. You got to go to elegantthemes.com. When you have a theme, keep in mind too that you want a theme from a company where it's really popular or long-lasting. If you get a theme from ThemeForest or WordPress itself, those themes tend to last a long time. If you buy one from an independent developer, be careful. We ran into a case recently where somebody bought a theme a few years ago. The developer went out of business, and now we can't update the theme to match WordPress. We're stuck. We actually have to rebuild the site from scratch. So be careful about the themes that you buy. When it comes to plugins, plugins convey functionality. They add functionality to your website. It might be for a form. It might be for searching and replacing content. It might be for any number of things in your website. So plugins are really handy. Be careful though. You don't want to be adding themes, or adding plugins rather, for which there's already functionality built into your theme. What can happen in that case is your plugin can conflict with that function in the theme. So you may want to test it out and try it first before you go live with it. Sometimes what you'll run into are plugins that conflict with each other, two entirely separate themes, or different plugins. Maybe it's the plugin for your slider and the plugin for your form, and they conflict with each other, and then your site crashes. How do you figure that out? It takes a little bit of work. So be judicious in your use of plugins. Some plugins are free. Some plugins may cost hundreds of dollars. It depends on the plugin and what function you're trying to achieve. So when it comes to plugins, again, be judicious. Don't incorporate any more than you need. If you disable a plugin, get rid of it. Plugins also can be exploitative, meaning sometimes somebody will develop a plugin, perfectly fine, legitimate, and then somebody else will buy that plugin, some other development company, and convert it into malware. So you have to be careful about the plugins that you use. Make sure that you're using plugins that have been around a while, that have been updated recently, and have a good star review rating. Lots more about plugins to be aware of. WordPress sites can be easy to use. They can be kind of drag and drop, but at the same time, they can be a challenge if you're not quite sure how to use WordPress, because there's lots of training available for WordPress, lots of YouTube videos and so on. So you've got a wealth of resources on how to use WordPress. Depending on the theme, they may have theme videos, and the plugin, sometimes they have videos on how to use those plugins. Lots of support available. But sometimes you want to customize something. And we'll talk about little customizations we've done for some clients ourselves, that if you want to do the customizations, there isn't a plugin that fits, or you're trying to make something centered and you can't figure out how. So those kind of things sometimes run into challenges. You may need to hire somebody to help with those little details. So there can be options and challenges even with WordPress themes. Something to know about WordPress is that it updates fairly frequently. On average, probably once a month or maybe twice a month or every couple of months. So be aware that WordPress is updating frequently. Your plugins will be updating all the time, and your themes will most likely be updating as well. So you have to stay on top of it and keep updating those things. Are you going to do that, or is somebody else going to do that for you? Another decision to be aware of. So WordPress is a great idea for most people, but it has some things you need to be aware of as well. So when it comes to building out your website, whether you do it at WordPress or elsewhere, there's a bunch of information you need to hang on to and keep. Definitely keep your login for your domain registration account. We've had a number of clients where the person who registered the domain registered in their own name, not the name of their business owner. So when the business owner tries to find the original web guy and they're gone, now they're stuck and they don't even own their own domain name. That happens. So make sure you're able to get into that account. Better yet, it should be your account, not somebody else's, so that you can register that domain yourself, or make sure that it's a trustworthy company and that they can transfer that to you. In any case, in every case, it should always be listed with you as the registrant, the owner of that domain name, no matter what. So that way, even if the website guy disappears, you can contact the registering company, the registrar, and let them know you are the registrant and you need to handle your domain name. So there's other things like the FTP codes, file transfer protocol. That's how you get files up on your website. Control panel logins, database logins, WordPress logins, all that stuff you should hang on to. Sometimes there are admin logins beyond the obvious for something behind the scenes. Make sure to get those. Always keep and store the name of your website company, your hosting company. Keep all of that information. Several times a year, we wind up with what we call rescue clients, where they've either lost or were never given this information. They're trying to recover control of their own website, and they can't because it's gone. Whoever registered and built the website, they've disappeared. The site or domain name have now expired, and there's no way to get it. So keep all this information so you won't run into that situation. So what does a website cost? Well, amateurs might charge a few $100 to $1,500 or so, but you get what you pay for. Generally speaking, they won't host it for you. That's going to be extra. They won't maintain it for you. That's going to be extra. They certainly won't be able to provide any kind of marketing consultation or business consultation. They won't write it for you. They'll expect you to write it yourself. They won't provide any extras like consulting on images or how to structure the site or even putting together a store. It may not even include a store. They probably don't provide email and so on. So you get what you pay for. Be wary of low-cost websites. Then there are what are called template sites. This is really common within certain industries. So if you're a chiropractor or an attorney, there are companies out there that just build websites for chiropractors or attorneys. And the front-end cost might be relatively low, maybe $50 or a couple $100, up to $1,000. So it may be less expensive up front than building a $6,000 or a $10,000 website, but the hosting fees will be more. They might be up to several $100s a month. So a template site might be an option for you, but it might wind up costing you more money in the long term. And another particular issue with templated sites is that while it's great to have pre-built content and a pre-built website and a pre-built theme, your site's going to look like 3,000 other chiropractors. And in fact, it'll contain exactly the same content. Those articles and those charts and those downloads will be the same thing that's on everybody else's website, which won't score many points at Google. So in that sense, you're not really doing yourself a favor, since it's really not the same site, not the customized site. It's the same site as everybody else has. Now, if you have a site built for you by a website company, then you're generally looking at about $6,000 on average. We charge a little bit less for some pages, a little bit more for others. It depends on the nature of your business and what you want, what features you want. But that's a pretty good average for a good-sized website. We've built sites in the few $100 range up to the hundreds of thousands of dollars. It depends on the site itself. A couple of years ago, Puget Sound Business Journal said that websites cost between $6,000 and $100,000. Well, that's kind of a wide range, kind of a useless bit of information because it's such a wide range. It comes back to what do you want in your site and what kind of support do you want for your website and your marketing efforts. So some other things about website design in terms of what creates a successful website. The design really needs to support your business identity and your image. Who are you? Are you the funny, jovial guys, or are you the knowledgeable, professorial information kind of guys? It depends. So it should support your image. Here's an example of that. Here's a site from about 23 years ago. This was a client who's a consultant. Now, this is an ugly old site. We did not build this site. This is a site the client had built for him. Now, even for 23 years ago, this was a terrible website. He says that he's world-class, but does this website look world-class to you? No. It's hard to read. The navigation changes on every page. There were virtually no pictures in the site. There were no benefit statements. It was poorly written, lots of problems with it. So we met Bert in, I think, 1999 or 2000, and we redesigned his site. So this was 20-something years ago. So this was the site that, as it looked at that time, hopefully much better, but not up to today's standards. Well, in 2005, I think it was, we redesigned the site, modernized it a bit. We incorporated some video in the site. That's a video of Bert that walks on at the top of the page. We also added some e-commerce. You can schedule and register and take some online courses directly in the website. And we rewrote some of the pages here and added some additional functionality. And then in 2018, I think it was, we rebuilt the site yet again, changing the name of his company. And so now he's got a new site, and you can see it looks more modern compared to his old websites. Here's some other examples of that. Here's a business coach, or a voice coach rather, up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And this was the site that we inherited back, I think, in 2000, 2002 or something. We rebuilt her website at that time and modernized it a bit. And again, it's better looking for that point in time. And then a couple of years ago, we redid the site again in WordPress. So that now she's able to go in and make changes to the site directly. And we can see there are different services right at the top of the page. Here's another example from ancient history. And there's a reason I'm doing this. This goes back to 23 years ago again when we worked with Northwestern Industries, largest glass fabricator on the West Coast here in Seattle. And they had the loading dock guy build this website in Microsoft Front Page because he could. So this is their website from about 1995 to 99, I think it was. And notice that little email icon? Well, that was actually an animated icon. It's kind of popular at the time. In this case, the email kind of flew along and then got eaten up by a mailbox. It was cheesy then, and it's just something you wouldn't do today. So this was the website that we rebuilt for them, I think in 99 or 2000. Again, the standards of the time. And then we redid the site again with these large beauty images. We call them hero images. We did this site, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. So again, here's an old looking site. But interestingly enough, this was this client's websites through about 2016 or 17. So they were left with this ugly old website for maybe 20 years. And the reason that they didn't have another company build it is because the front end, the site that you see, ties into the back end, the systems within their in-house systems. And they couldn't find a web developer or web designer that could do it or was willing to do it. So we did that. We connected those two up and made them look the same. So here's their current site that we built a few years ago. And there's a button in the upper right that talks about tracking, or you can go in and place an order or look up a bill of lading or those kind of things. And all of that ties into their back end that we were then able to update and upgrade so that it was secure and fast and it looks like their website. Here's some other examples of websites and see if you can follow the common clues here. Make sure to note that there's a phone number in the header. Navigation is relatively simple to use and straightforward, and there's a big hero image. The hero image conveys a benefit right there for your family and guests to enjoy. You'll actually enjoy your carpets. Here's for an accountant, CPA. And again, it incorporates some benefit statements, large, big picture. Notice it shows people in the image. We'll talk about that in a minute. And there's 3 big boxes below the image are navigation boxes. So instead of using the standard top navigation, you can go straight to one of the key places in the website. This is for a client in Washington, D.C. that flips hotels. They fix up hotels and then they resell them. Well, the new hotel buyer wants to know, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? So we incorporate the benefit statements right into the sliders on the pages so that the new hotel buyer understands what they're getting. Again, nice, colorful, beautiful pictures, professionally taken. Here's for a local coach and author. He wanted his business book, his coaching book, to be right front and center. So we made it big and bold right up at the top, and so people can click on that and order his book. There's an audio clip right there from Dan, so he can tell you more about his practice and what he can do for you. A couple more examples. Here's a client who sells snack food products to convenience stores. Now, the site's nice looking. We did this about 5 or 6 years ago in WordPress, but we incorporated some custom features in here. Their drivers, all their employees, there's about 50 of them around the area, can log in behind the scenes, find out what the customers have ordered. They basically get a pick list and a route list for what products do they need to deliver to what stores today. So that's a kind of extra functionality that we can build into a site that may or may not be immediately obvious for you as a client. And finally, here's a client who's in the financial services field for cannabis retailers. And I think they're in something like 28 states now. They started out in 3 or 4 states back a few years ago. And you can see, again, that big, beautiful hero image and the benefit statement right there in the top that they can have their clients pay with this system, and they don't have to worry about cash, and they can't take credit cards. Behind the scenes, there's a whole merchant application system that's quite involved and has been evolving over time. We're continually working on this, adding new features like encryption, and as states change their requirements, we have to make those changes in the background too. All of that has to be incorporated into the design to make it easy to use, whether you're a merchant filling out a form or a customer applying for a card. So the design goes way beyond just making it look pretty. Some other considerations when it comes to the design, you have to choose your color palette. There are color palette pickers online, so if you Google color palette, you'll be able to find lots of advice and help. What I would suggest is that you have a primary color, and that you have 3 or 4 secondary colors or supporting or accent colors. For instance, you might have blue or teal as your supporting color, but you probably wouldn't want to have a secondary color of red. Red and blue kind of contrast, and they kind of fight for dominance. So to support blue, you might want to have a light gray and a dark gray, and maybe a gold color or a light green color or something that matches with your color palette. When it comes to fonts, it's another consideration. Don't use too many fonts on any given page. When it comes to fonts, my suggestion would be to download the font and upload it into your website versus using online fonts. For instance, you can get fonts at Google. Great, they're free, but it might slow down your site a little bit because your website visitor is having to go get the fonts through their browser, and it takes a little bit longer to do that. So download the fonts and incorporate them directly into your website. Make sure that your fonts match your identity. If you're a steel or rebar company, for instance, you probably don't want to use script fonts, which are hard to read on a phone anyway. Definitely never use Comic Sans for any reason. That's an inside joke for designers. And make sure, again, that they're readable, especially on a phone. When it comes to your layout, what's above the fold, what's on the initial screen is the most important thing. So make sure that your hero images are there, or that your special offers, or especially your benefit statements, all those are above the fold. Figure out how you're going to lay out multiple columns. I would recommend that you have no more than 2 columns on the desktop, and that everything on a phone be 1 column. Many themes and templates will do that automatically. Some, it might be a little tricky to do that. So you have to make sure you plan for that in advance. Think about the customer preferences. I understand you want to make the site look nice in terms of your preferences, but in the end, it's not actually about you or me as the designer. It's about what your customer wants, what your customer thinks is professional, and that you really have to look at your website through your customer's eyes. And there are 2 other components to that, something called the user interface, how they actually navigate through the site, what it looks like to them in their browser or their other devices. And then the user experience. That is, do they find it easy to use? Is it fun? Is it exciting? Is it full of information? All that kind of stuff. So that user interface and user experience, something to look up online, UI and UX. So those are some other considerations for the website. Beyond that, more stuff to know about website design. Yep, it needs to support your business image. We said that. Again, consider the visitor expectations. We said that. But when it comes to the download time, that's a key ingredient for Google. Remember, we want to get that down to under 3 seconds, ideally under 1 second. Most of the time, when we're dealing with a website we didn't build and somebody wants to make it load faster, they've called us in to make the load time faster. There was a restaurant down in San Diego area that was taking 15 to 30 seconds to load. Oh my gosh, nobody's going to wait that long. We got it to load in under 3 seconds. And one of the primary ways to do that was to pre-size and optimize and scale those images that are showing up on the homepage and other pages. What I mean by that is when you scale the images, make sure to upload the image to fit the space it's intended to be in. If it's going to be a sidebar image that's only 300 pixels wide, don't upload a 2,000 pixel wide image. It's going to take a lot longer to download. When you optimize the image, you can do that in Photoshop, that is reducing the file size of the image. But I would recommend that you go to a website called tinypng or tinyjpg.com. Either one of those 2 websites, you upload your file or files, and then it optimizes them. It crunches down the file size. And for the most part, you can't tell the difference in terms of the picture quality. But the file can be considerably less. It can be half the size, or maybe the 1/10 of the size. We commonly find that it shrinks the file size down to 1/4 of its original size, which means your page is going to load faster. So in optimizing the images, that's one thing, but you also want to optimize the code behind the scenes. There's a great little plugin for WordPress sites called Hummingbird. It's got its quirks. It can cause problems with the cache, that is the stored files in the website, but it's a great way to optimize, to minimize, or what we call minify, the JavaScript, the scripting, and the CSS, the styling behind the scenes to make your site load faster. Keep in mind that form follows function. Just like we talked about with that financial services for the cannabis industry, we can make a pretty looking layout for a form, but it needs to be easy to be filled out, and more importantly, it needs to work. So we had to lay out the form such that it was understandable to use before we had to figure out how to make it look good. And always, effective is better than cool. And we had a client years ago, a massage therapy studio, and their original site was built by a gamer back east. And he built the website, again, massage therapy studio, to look like a video game. It looked more like something out of Terminator with metal plating and rivets and bolts with sound effects that sound like steel on steel. It just totally didn't convey the right image for a massage therapy website, which should be more soft and warm and cozy. So again, think about the image and the identity that you want to convey. Forego the coolness to make sure your website is effective. If you have too many things that are spinning and flying around on the page or revolving and revealing, it's just too much. Minimize that. Again, use those kind of features judiciously. Key to this is great photography. When we ask people to point to websites that they are well designed, they almost always have great looking photos. That's the real key. It's not the design. It's not even the template or layout in many cases. It's the photography. So let's look at a couple of examples of that. Let's imagine that you go to a restaurant and you look in the window and there is nobody inside. Does that make you more or less likely to want to go in? The same thing applies to your image in your website, your photos. The photo on the left is for one of our clients in South Center in Tukwila, Washington. And the photo on the right is that same restaurant, same room, but full of people. Which one is more inviting? Yeah, I thought so. So think about that, whether it's an office space or a product or a service. Show your workers installing that roofing. Show somebody applying that skin cream. Show people in the picture. That's a key to making it feel real. There's something else when it comes to photography. You can hire a photographer. It may cost you $500 or $2,000 to hire a photographer. Maybe that's not in the budget, so you use stock photos. And okay, we've got somebody in the picture, but it's just some hands. It's kind of obtuse as far as what's actually happening in that picture. We can't get a feel for the business in that sense. And when it comes to stock photos, you might go to some place like dreamstime.com or 123rf.com or bigstockphoto.com. Those are some of the companies that we use, and pay $3 or $10 for a photo. Be wary, though, of going to places that offer free photos, like unsplash.com. You can download free photos and stick them on your website, but you may run into copyright problems with those photos. For example, did you know that photos of the Eiffel Tower at night showing the lighting are copyrighted? It doesn't matter who took the photo, even if you took it yourself. The lighting on the Eiffel Tower is copyrighted. So we try to protect our clients from those kind of issues by using what are called royalty-free images. They're not free pictures, but that means you don't have to pay royalties for those pictures later. Getting back to the images on the screen, though, the one on the right-hand side is for one of our clients. She's a CPA. And we had a photographer, professional photographer, come in and take the picture. We wanted to convey through the entire website that Debbie and her staff are easy to work with, that they are friendly. When you look at that friendly face, it says that. And in fact, the people in the foreground, you can even see the smile on the face of the woman, and even the man kind of intimates that with his expression or what you can see of it. So we wanted them to convey that it's easy and fun to work with Debbie. You don't normally think about that when you think about CPAs. So whatever the image is, you want that to be conveyed in your photos. Remember, a photo is worth 1,000 words. You just want to make sure it's the right words. So when it comes to photography, that's really important. But there are other factors. So when it comes to websites, we always want to make sure that your site is mobile friendly. Well, if you have another company build it, it should be. If you have a CMS like WordPress or Wix or Weebly or Squarespace, it should be automatically. But you might want to check that. We've seen cases of websites that were built by other companies or one of these CMS services or sites that turned out to be, they would pass the test, but they contained lots of problems. And if your site is old, if it's more than a few years old, it might not actually be mobile friendly. So how do you know? Well, first of all, I need to point out that more than half of the traffic these days is coming from mobile devices. You can notice the curve is starting to flatten there. That means that just about half of your customers are still using desktops, especially for office environments or B2B, business to business kind of businesses. So you have to build your websites so that it's mobile friendly and at the same time applies to the desktop view. Your statistics on your website will tell you a lot. If you have an existing website, it'll tell you what kind of devices you're looking at in your website. So in this case, about half of your visitors between Windows, Linux, and Mac are coming from desktop machines, and the other half are coming from mobile devices. So here's a page you can go to. In fact, nowadays you can do this right in the Google search results. Just type in there, Google Mobile Friendly Test, and then enter your URL for your website right in the box, and it'll come up with the results. Now, if you have an old site that's not mobile friendly, here's the result you're going to see, that it's not mobile friendly and that there are issues with your website. If you have a site that's mobile friendly, here's the ideal result. This is one site we built for a client that does medical billing. In this case, the site is not only mobile friendly, it passed the test, but there are no download issues. That's the ideal situation. So make sure that you run a mobile friendly test and then pay attention to the details. When it comes to a mobile site, here's what you know already. This is what it looks like on a desktop. Notice that the full navigation is in place. When you go to a tablet, notice that the color changes from blue to gold for the navigation bar at the top. There's less information in the header. There's a click to call button versus a phone number that you can probably click to call. And the menu changes to what we call the mobile menu, or the hamburger menu, the 3 lines. So when you click on that, you get a mobile menu. And you can see on a tablet, you still have 2 columns because it still works on a tablet, whether it's in landscape or portrait mode. But on a phone, 2 columns doesn't work. So we go down to 1 column here. We still have the standard mobile menu at the top. So part of what we need to look at is how is the site going to lay out in various devices, held sideways or vertical. That's important for your visitor experience. When it comes to other aspects, other factors, not only is mobile friendly important, but having video on your site is important. That's a whole topic we can talk about for a long time right there. Having a YouTube channel and then embedding your YouTube videos in your website is great. By the way, a little side tip, make sure that you use your audio in your video should be transcribed. You should have a transcription in your video. Make that available. Make sure that your video, if you do it yourself, is uploaded to your site and is readily available. That doesn't have to be professionally produced. You doing your own video with your own phone could be just fine. But video does help with search engines. It also helps really show that how real you are, helps communicate with your visitors. People will watch a video for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, but they won't read for that long. When it comes to social media, obviously your link should be there. If you're a B2B business, maybe you need a LinkedIn page, but not so much a Facebook or Twitter feed. If you're a B2C business, business to consumer, you probably should have a Facebook page and maybe even a Twitter feed, maybe Pinterest or Instagram or something else. Those social media icons should be in your site. The site should be secure. In most hosting companies, that should be automatic and free. If your hosting company is charging you for a secure site, talk to me. We offer that for free. And most hosting companies do these days. The site needs to be fast loading. It goes beyond what you build in the site. The servers also need to be fast. Make sure, no matter where it's hosted, that the servers are capable of something called HTTP2. It's basically HTTP, Hypertext Protocol version 2, and that helps speed up the delivery of your website. Something that is a little technical, but I want to mention it here, is something called structured data. Google, for one, is very good at guessing what's on your website, but they're not so good at knowing. If you're selling a product, for instance, they can guess that it's a product for sale, but they may not understand what category it's in or what the features are or what the price is, even though you've got a price visible on the page. The structured data is information behind the scenes that tells Google and the other search engines what it's all about. So if you're doing a seminar, the structured data might show the title of the seminar, the location of the seminar, the event of the seminar, who the speaker is, what are the hours, and a lot more. And in that way, you're helping Google to understand exactly what the content is about. They don't have to guess. Structured data is important for Google to get better search engine results. You may also have a blog, which means now you have timely and newsworthy content. So make sure if you have a blog that you categorize it and make full use of tags. Those are, again, ways that Google can help understand your content. That will make your content be a lot better, not just for Google, but for visitors to your website. Think of your website as a publishing outlet, not as a marketing brochure. And with a blog, you're constantly giving them a fresh stream of new information. More about that in a minute. Make sure you have consistent name, address, and phone number not just at Google or not just on your website, but across the web. It's actually a service that we provide called Premium Listing Service that makes sure that information on a month-to-month basis is consistent everywhere you go across the web. And there's a lot more that we can talk about with website, but these are some of the basics to help your website be successful. Now, when it comes to that name, address, and phone number, I want to mention we offer a little free scan for you. Feel free to do this. If you go to my website, newtechweb.com/scan.htm, again, newtechweb.com/scan.htm, enter in your contact information, your address and phone number, and then run the scan. Hopefully you have no or very few mistakes. If that's the case, that's great. But if you've been in business around a while and you've moved locations, or if you're a brand new business and you never had a website before, you may wind up with a lot of omissions or missing information or errors. So in that case, we can help you get those, get your name, address, and phone number to be consistent across the board. No matter who does it for you, you make sure that your name, address, and phone number is consistent. The most important key, though, above everything we've talked about here, is content. How do you create content of value? First of all, why should you? It establishes you as the expert. The more content that you provide, the more of a resource that you are. It's a way for you to differentiate yourself from your competitors. You don't simply take the time or spend the money to do it. You can write the content yourself or have a writer write it for you. It doesn't matter. What's important is that it be original, that they be your words. The more new content that you have on the website, the larger your website, the more areas and topics you have on the website, the better it is for all, for the search engines and for your visitors and for your marketing message. It enhances that visitor experience. People will be left with the idea that, wow, you're a great resource. If I can get this much just from looking at your website, imagine if I bought your service or bought your product or worked with you. It creates an opportunity to provide that relationship building. So when you build a relationship, it could be with your own employees. Maybe you feature Employee of the Month. Maybe you offer a special product and feature a vendor, and maybe you provide Customer of the Month or extra customer tips or customer service venues. Give them different ways to interact with you. Help them feel welcome. Lots of different ways to create interactivity there as well. What I mean by interactivity is maybe filling out a form. That's a simple one. Or maybe something as complicated as a game. Years ago, we created this site. This goes back 15 or 20 years now, where we built a game for the largest kiwi fruit distributor in North America. We were in a marketing meeting with them, and they said they wanted to make sure that eating kiwi fruit conveyed a certain message, a certain marketing message. I'll tell you that in a second. So we created a game, and you might be able to see the little guy standing next to the pickup truck on the bridge. Well, kiwi fruit are from New Zealand, where bungee jumping was created. So when you hit your space bar, the little guy jumps off the bridge, bungee jumps off, and he snags a kiwi fruit, if you're lucky. So it counts how many jumps you made, and you score your points, not just in numbers, but in nutrition, your vitamins and your nutrients. So what this tells the user is eating kiwi fruit is fun, the game, and it's nutritious. It's good for you. And that was exactly the marketing message they wanted to convey. So think about your marketing messages and style your interactive features, if you have any, to convey that marketing message. If the site is full of content, it allows you to cast a wider net in search engines. That is, you'll have more topics on your site. A great example of that is to take your services page, and you might list 5 or 10 of your services there, and split it apart into separate pages. So you might have a separate page for each different service that you provide. By doing that, you can laser focus in on that one service. Maybe a customer doesn't need all of your services, and they're looking for just one of your services. By doing that, it makes it more identifiable to search engines and to your visitors that that's the page all about that service. So make sure that you do that. Have more pages on your site for resources, glossary, facts, articles, blog posts, downloadable videos, downloadable PDFs, other content of other kinds, audios and videos. The more stuff you have on your site, you become a much bigger target for the search engines, and you become more enjoyable for your visitors. Again, that stickier site, the site that people arrive in and want to stay in, and they don't just hit your site and leave, is a good thing. So when I say sticky and staying in your website, here's an example of that. If you've ever been to a casino, on the outside there are lights, 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 and lots of doors, lots of ways to get in. But once you wind your way down to the gaming floor and you turn around, you don't see the doors. You see other gaming tables and plants and waitresses and other people, but not so much the doors. The metaphor here is that you want to give yourself a lot of ways to get into your website, a lot of ways to navigate around your website, links to other pages throughout the site, but not so many ways to escape. That is, if you provide a link to an external website, maybe an association you belong to, or another helpful resource that you're linking to, that's fine. But make sure whenever you provide that external link that goes beyond your site, do it in a different tab or a different window. So your web designer, web developer can help you with that. So we talk about content a lot, but what is good content? Well, it's content that's well written, that is, grammatically, syntactically, that kind of thing, but that it's written for your visitors. It helps support your company messages, yep, and it's important for search engines to be able to crawl your site and understand what your site is all about. The subject of the content should be timely. It should be of interest to your visitors. It should not just be a commercial. Remember, for instance, if you went to a TV show and it was 50 minutes of commercials, and 10 minutes worth of show, you probably wouldn't watch that many episodes. So instead, you want to use 80% or 90% valuable information and only 10 or 20% selling. So it really should be that valuable resource and not just a commercial. And keep it updated. Here's an example of that. One of our clients is a lighting provider, but both the installer and the distributor of different lighting products, commercial lighting products. And when the shutdown happened, the coronavirus lockdown, well, that really hampered their business because they couldn't get out, they couldn't go in different locations. And so to help them build traffic during this time, back in July, we created an article that was very newsworthy, very topical and timely about germicidal lighting, antimicrobial, antibacterial, antiviral lighting. So in this case, this single post on their website boosted their traffic by a number of times. I think it was something like 5 times the amount of normal traffic because it was so topical and people were searching out this topic online. So when you do this, make sure to think about what are the topics in the news that apply even tangentially to my topic, and how can I employ that to my advantage to bring people to my website. You want to make sure to focus on your visitors. That is, think about when you're writing the content that they're sitting across the table from you. Don't write to audiences, teachers say, or our clients tell us. Instead, focus specifically on them, you and your, immediately followed by some kind of a benefit. Avoid what I call the I, our, us disease. Let me give you a couple of examples of that. Here's a website I grabbed randomly a few years ago, and you can see this is their services page, which ostensibly should be about the customer, as the services are provided to the customer. But if you look at the circled items, it's all about the company, the name of the company, and our, all the way down that page. This really should be written that you and your get some benefit out of it. You can rest assured, you'll sleep better, you'll look good in front of your boss, instead of about us. Another example of that, this is from a massage therapist. This was on his about page. Well, the about page should be about you, shouldn't it? Well, yeah, but it also should be about what you do for people, what they get out of that interaction. So instead of this, that basically shows I all the way down the page, write sentences with you and your. How does somebody benefit by your degree or your experience or your knowledge? So that's what you want to build into all of your content. What do people get out of working with you or buying your service or product? So it needs to really focus on the visitors. The benefit statements are important. When I talk about sales, I say there's really three key things to selling anything. Benefits, benefits, and benefits. Make sure that all of your pages, especially in headlines, convey benefits. Make sure all of your pages in your site have some kind of a call to action. Get them to do something. It might be tell a friend, give us a referral, download a page, watch a video, fill in the form, buy something. Make sure that everywhere throughout your site, you're always telling your visitors, do something. Call them to action. When it comes to writing the content, how long should it be? Well, ideally, every page, every post should be 600 to 1,000 words. That seems like a lot of words. Well, it will be if it's not well organized. So you have to make sure it's organized into sections, bullet points, headings, subheadings, diagrams, pictures. All of that will help convey the meaning and not just make it boring to read. Have at least 300 words on every page. Even a product description should be a couple hundred words. So make sure that you err on the side of longer is better. I'll give you a tip on my website later. I'll send you that link for a great book in terms of writing content. It's called The Ultimate Sales Letter. More on that later. Make sure you incorporate keywords or key phrases in your website throughout, in the title tags, in the headings and subheadings, and throughout your content. There's a real art to this. It shouldn't be any more than about 2% of the time that you do this. So if you have a keyword and you have 1,000 words on the page, it should only be mentioned about 20 times. If you have a key phrase, about the same. You want to make sure those are at the beginning of paragraphs or in subheads rather than at the end. Also make sure to embed location names in your site. So if you're a painter and you service South King County, list the cities in South King County. Don't just say we service South Puget Sound or South King County, because nobody searches for that. They'll search for Kent or Auburn or Des Moines, but they won't search for South King County. So use the words that they search for. In many cases, Google will find those words and they'll index them. So even if somebody on a phone says painter near me, Google will understand which cities are near you because of your phone, because of GPS. So use those location names. That'll help you build your site better. Make sure that you employ titles and descriptions and internal heading tags and those kind of things that will help Google and your visitors understand what the site's about. That structured data is important too behind the scenes. Make sure that you have links to external sites so that you're a good resource and that you have links throughout the site pointing to other pages. One key example of that is if you have a blog post that talks about uses for your product or industry terms or newsworthy events, how does that relate to you or your service or your product? Well, you want a link or a statement in that blog post to point back to the product detail page or to the service page or something on the about page when you're talking about your association. So always link between different pages, and that again helps Google figure out what your page is about, makes your site a lot more usable. Here's a site that we built a few years ago for a client, a snack food distributor up in Alaska. It's an e-commerce site. You can place items in the cart, but you can't buy them. Instead, in this case, you can place items in the cart and then request a quote because they're like commodities. The prices are changing all the time. But what if you are selling online? What are some of the key ingredients to selling online? First of all, you want to make it easy to buy. You want to make sure that your site is effective and it's easy to figure out how to find the products. They're in categories. The descriptions are full. Maybe you have videos showing you how to use a product or install it. Make sure that you have a wealth of information about the products, not just order one. Make sure that you offer multiple modes of contact. Some people would prefer to call. Some would rather email. Some would rather fill out the form. Frankly, I don't care. I just want them to get in touch with you. So give them all of those options. At the same time, give them multiple ways to pay you. If they use PayPal, great. If they want to use their credit card, great. If they want to send you a check, great. Whatever works for you. It doesn't matter how they pay you as long as they pay you. So give them multiple modes of payments, multiple methods of payment. The more you offer, the more likely it is that they'll be willing to buy from you. It provides some kind of extra value. If you sell a product or service, give them something for free. For instance, we're working with a Montessori school that's working on building up a coupon booklet. It's to the piano teacher or the kids' clothing store or the local kids' gym. And the Montessori school is doing the legwork to put together the coupon packet. But once they put this together, that is, if you come in for a free tour, to schedule a tour, even if you don't buy anything, you get this coupon packet worth $500 just for scheduling a tour. It's well worth it. It acts as an incentive. But forever after, it doesn't cost them a dime because all of the offers are coming from other businesses. So that's one kind of way to provide value without taking money out of your pocket. We can help you with that kind of thing too. You want to incent some case of urgency here, some sense of urgency. There's only 9 left in stock, or you better book our time today because I only have so much time in November, or the season is ending, or the manufacturer is closing out this line. Give them some reason to place the order now, or in many cases they won't. They'll set it aside, they might even bookmark you, and then they'll never look at you again. So give them some sense of urgency and reduce the risk. Either give them a guarantee or a product return. When it comes to guarantees and warranties, my suggestion is to go beyond the manufacturer warranties. Let's say you're reselling a product that's got a 30-day warranty. My suggestion would be to give a 60-day, 90-day, 1 year, or even a lifetime warranty. What I've found in general, is that the longer the warranty period that you provide, maybe money back guarantee, is that your returns will go down. The number of returns goes down. The reason for that is they'll either forget about it, they'll have used it up, or they kind of feel guilty. They've used it for a year and now they don't want to return it. So offer some kind of guarantee. Remember, it's called risk reversal. You're reversing the risk, you're putting the risk on you, not the person who's buying from you, who may not know you. And finally, and most importantly in this case, ask for the sale. It's similar to calls to action. Ask them to buy, ask them to add more, ask them to buy a second one, ask them to get it in a different color, ask them to schedule in advance, ask them to tell a friend, ask them to write a review. If you don't ask, you don't get. That's a key lesson for business in general, and especially for websites. So the last couple of things here. What are the steps? Again, we've talked about a lot of things. You want to plan out your site according to creating a sitemap and beyond. Organize the information in your site so that it makes sense. Design it so that it looks professionally appropriate. Write the content so that it's a wealth of information. Build out the site, if you're using a content management system or otherwise. Market the site, something that we'll talk about in another seminar that's available on my website. Search engine optimization, search engine marketing, Google Ads, and so on. You want to continue to test and revise your website forever. It's a never-ending process. Your website should never be done and finished. It's a never-ending process. So here are those top 10 tips that I promised you, and then right after that, the bonus. So again, start with a purpose and a plan in mind. Be willing to test your website. Figure out what works. Benefits, benefits, benefits. All of the content in your website should convey benefits for your product or service. Again, it should have a professional design, well-written content that's a wealth of information and valuable to your customers and your website visitors. The website should be visible. Again, you want to make sure that you're using search engine optimization, whether you pay for it or somebody else does it for you, or you do it yourself, or you use some kind of a search engine marketing tool like Google Ads. Building those relationships with your customers especially is really key, and other vendors, other website owners that can send you traffic. That's another good ingredient. Make sure that you reduce their risk. It could be through a guarantee or some kind of special offer, or just having your customer service policies available online and a privacy policy. That's key. Make it easy to use your product, easy to use your website. Make sure it's easy to buy from you, easy to return a product if that's something you offer. Make sure it's simple and easy to do business with you in general. And finally, once again, ask. Ask them to download. Ask them to give you a referral. Ask them to buy. Ask them to do whatever it is you need them to do. Ask. So with that, we've got maybe a couple of minutes here for questions, and hopefully you've been putting questions in the chat all along. If you do have questions, you can call me. You can email me at any time, jim@newtechweb.com or 253-639-3165. And as a bonus to you, the other couple of seminars that I normally teach at BizFair and some extra downloads are available on this website. It's not available to most people who get our website. It's only to BizFair attendees. newtechweb.com/bizfair. Again, that's newtechweb.com/bizfair. I hope you got a lot out of the seminar. Look forward to hearing about your website success, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.